A dog can stay single, but its owner cannot. For the past 5 years, Harry had worried himself sick over his owner, just to stop him from turning into a forever alone wizard. Yes, that very man, star of the university judo team, a guy who charged in like a bear into battle. That day, Harry picked the perfect spot to relieve himself. It seemed to catch the sweet and sour scent of love in the air, so strong that not even the smell of poop could mask it. Sure enough, it set up the perfect chance for Caden to play the role of hero saving the damsel in distress. A temporary wall at a shop under renovation suddenly shook violently, and Caden immediately rushed forward, rescuing a beauty who had nearly been crushed. It was a stunning moment. The beauty wanted to repay him for saving her life, but since the shop was still being remodeled, all she could do was leave Caden a business card. From that day on, Caden couldn't stop thinking about her. He began to feel that the straightness inside him wasn't so straight anymore. This troubled him deeply, so much so that he didn't even dare confide in his best friend of 10 years. And yet, curiosity gnawed at him. Just what kind of store did that beauty own? But every time he happened to see her, he couldn't bring himself to step forward and say hello. He only dared to sneak glances at her while jogging in the mornings. Turns out the beauty ran a bakery, and now, caught red-handed. It seemed he couldn't hide anymore. But the way the beauty's eyes lit up when they met his gaze, as if she really liked athletic types, made Caden's heart race. That dazzling smile. Could it be she had feelings for him too? Following the beauty inside, Caden realized it was the bakery's grand opening day. Without a second thought, he dashed back out, sprinting to buy some energy snacks to gift the beauty. Because he ran too fast, the muscles in his athletic shorts flexed with every stride, the hard-earned results of years of judo training like meat-filled buns rising and falling. The beauty not only didn't mind, but even offered him a freshly baked croissant in return, a gesture to repay the life-saving favor from before. He even complimented, "Someone who trains so diligently is really attractive." In that instant, Caden felt as if Cupid's arrow had struck his heart. Unable to hold it in any longer, he confessed to his best friend that he had been completely bewitched by a man. To his shock, his friend wasn't the least bit surprised, as if he had long known Caden would eventually bend. Once Caden had confirmed his feelings, the next step was obvious. Create chances, appear often in front of the other person, and let affection slowly grow. His friend advised, "If you see an opening, you've got to attack immediately." But there was a problem. The bakery was always packed. At 9 in the morning, it was crammed with people. By 1 in the afternoon, Mateo was busy restocking. At 6, the shop was already closed. Clearly, slipping in during normal hours was impossible. His only chance was early in the morning, just as the bakery opened. And as luck would have it, things went smoothly. The beauty still remembered him. Caden pulled out the milk box he had prepared, offering it as a small token in return for yesterday's croissant. At that moment, the beauty, equipped with what could only be called the latest model gay radar, looked at Caden's flushed arms and picked up a strong signal. This man wants to give me a home. But right now, the beauty's only focus was on running his bakery. Marriage was the last thing on his mind. So he decided to keep his distance from Caden. Unexpectedly, Caden took the initiative. "Let me carry those heavy bags of ingredients inside for you." The truth was, baking ingredients were extremely heavy, and the beauty's slender frame simply couldn't handle them alone. He accepted the help, partly because he really couldn't manage, partly because the image of a muscle addict in front of him was impossible to resist. As Caden hoisted the heavy sacks, the raw strength in his movements made it impossible for the beauty to look away. His name was Mateo, 27 years old. In fact, Mateo had been considering hiring a part-time worker. Handling everything alone was too much. Caden, being the first to hear this, immediately lit up with anticipation. He thought to himself, "I don't need the pay. Just seeing Mateo every day is more than enough." But Mateo, trying to suppress the rebellious stirrings in his heart, made the excuse that he wanted someone with experience. Right then, Caden lifted his shirt to wipe away sweat, revealing a firm, perfectly defined set of abs. Mateo froze, his mind going blank, and blurted out before he could stop himself. "More than qualified. You can start tomorrow." Caden had taken his very first step on the road to conquest. On his first day at work, Matteo, wanting to feast his eyes, deliberately prepared a uniform for him, 2 sizes too small. The logo on the shirt looked as though it might burst open any second, while Matteo, drinking in those broad shoulders and that powerful frame, struggled inwardly. This is exactly my type. But how on earth am I supposed to stop myself from pouncing? Yet no matter how hard he tried, indecent scenes kept flashing through his mind, making it impossible to focus on work. As for Caden, he foolishly pined for the shop owner while taking on every task within his power to ease Matteo's load. At the end of the day, Matteo was still berating himself for his dirty thoughts when he slipped and nearly fell face first onto Caden's sausage. Caden caught him in time, but Matteo still ended up with a nosebleed, looking oddly satisfied. A month slipped by in the blink of an eye. Caden's best friend asked about his romantic progress. Caden, looking troubled, said, "The boss treats me really well, but sometimes I feel like there's a special gaze on me. Every time we accidentally touch arms, he runs off with some excuse. Even when I change clothes, he deliberately avoids looking." Hearing this, his friend urged, "It's time for phase 2. Turn on that damn charm of yours." Meanwhile, Matteo was equally tormented. At first, he only meant to enjoy the view and amuse himself with a little eye candy, but before long, he found himself genuinely drawn to Caden. By now, it was clear. If he kept denying himself, the ending wouldn't be pretty. Caden remembered his friend's advice. When it came time to pipe cream, he tried to channel all his charm. But the piping bag wouldn't cooperate. Unable to withstand his grip, it burst. Cream splattered everywhere. Caden seized the moment. "There's no mirror here. Boss, could you help me wipe some off?" The two of them edged closer and closer. Caden pulled Matteo's hand, guiding him to wipe the cream from his body. While Matteo was still fiercely battling with himself, insisting he must not cross the line, Caden could no longer hold back. He leaned in and kissed him. And once you sink in, there's no escaping. Matteo, on the verge of unleashing his rampage mode, couldn't contain the voice of his heart. But just then, a customer entered the bakery, cutting everything short. Caden waited, wondering why Matteo hadn't come back after serving them. All he caught was a glimpse of Matteo's retreating figure. It was over. This time, real trouble had begun. Caden stayed in the shop all the way until closing time, but Matteo still didn't come back. Thinking about that impulsive kiss earlier, he could feel the awkwardness hanging thick in the air. Who would have thought, just turning the corner, he'd stumble upon love itself? Caden found Matteo sitting on the steps, dead drunk, hugging a stuffed bear and chatting away. Matteo was touching it all over, mumbling nonsense, even trying to introduce Caden to the bear. Clearly, he was completely gone. Seeing how thinly dressed Matteo was, Caden took off his own jacket and draped it over him, then tried to carry him home. But Matteo struggled wildly, refusing to be lifted. In the end, Caden had no choice but to put him down. And that was when Matteo, fueled by alcohol, started loudly complaining about Caden. After listening for a while, Caden realized something was off. He quickly covered Matteo's mouth with his hand. Then, word by word, he confirmed, "Boss, from the very start you knew I liked you, didn't you?" Matteo nodded. "Boss, you were interested in me too. That's why you kept imagining things." Matteo nodded again. "You also wanted to do that with me, but you've been holding yourself back?" Matteo nodded once more. Caden let go and immediately covered his face with both hands. Matteo thought he was in shock, but when he pulled Caden's hands down, what he saw instead was a flushed face, shy, yet brimming with happiness. Caden was so overjoyed he even offered Matteo his sports drink, then solemnly asked, "Boss, will you go out with me?" Matteo spat the mouthful of water straight out. He answered seriously, "I don't want a date. I just want to sleep." Caden couldn't understand. "We've already acknowledged our feelings, so why can't we just date properly?" Matteo only shook his head. Because I hate relationships. Love only makes people pathetic. I once loved someone, and that person turned my feelings into humiliation. He even tried to persuade Caden, "Didn't you fall for me at first just because of this face? I only like your body too." Humans are visual creatures. If we're attracted, we're attracted. Why bother calling it love? But Caden couldn't accept that way of thinking. This was his very first love. How could he treat it so lightly? No matter how he coaxed or pleaded, Mateo wouldn't change his stance. At last, Mateo grew impatient. "If you want love, go find someone else." Caden said nothing more. He just silently carried Mateo on his back and brought him home. Along the way, he made up his mind. Now that he was sure the boss had feelings for him, he would give everything he had to this fight. A skilled judo athlete never gives up just because the opponent defends, especially not in love. But now that Caden's true heart was laid bare, could the two of them really continue living together as if nothing had happened? Early in the morning, Mateo woke up as usual to open the bakery. Normally, no one should have been inside at that hour, yet the lights were brightly lit. Mateo found it strange. Isn't today supposed to be Caden's day off from part-time work? He stepped in to find the tables and floors spotless, freshly cleaned. Caden, meanwhile, was absorbed in reading something. When he noticed the boss arrive, he quickly shoved the book into his backpack and explained sheepishly, "I finished morning training early, so I came by to clean up. That way, you can get straight to baking later." Mateo felt a bit embarrassed, but seeing how Caden was clearly hoping to be praised, he couldn't bear to brush him off. He softly thanked him instead. Caden then suggested, "Since I exercise every morning anyway, and my classes don't start until 9, why don't I come by every day to help you clean?" "You don't even have to pay me," Mateo teased, pretending to question him. "If you don't take any pay, then why would you do it?" But inwardly, he sighed. This silly bear has no idea how to pursue someone, probably doesn't even have a single love cell alive in his body. Curious about what Caden had just been reading, Mateo made up an excuse. "If you buy me some milk, I'll consider letting you come clean every day." Caden immediately ran off to buy milk. But when he came back, Mateo was holding his love handbook and reading it. Mateo chuckled and teased, "Studying how to love? That's exactly your style." Still, he admitted there were a few useful points written in it. Caden didn't take it as a joke. He started putting it into practice right away. Mateo began to waver, then slowly started to enjoy it, until at last he agreed to Caden's request. "I can answer your questions, and I can even go on dates with you. But it won't be free. You'll have to give something in return." After that, Mateo was treated to a grand sausage feast. Even while busy cooking, Caden never lost focus. He held firmly to his ideals, while at the same time slipping in little dating applications whenever he could. When it was all over, Caden headed back to school. But inside, he felt a little hazy, lacking in confidence. He asked himself, "Can I really withstand this overwhelming pull?" He even felt a bit of self-loathing, as if everything he was doing had already strayed far from his original goal. And yet, he resolved firmly, he had to set things back on track to make Mateo truly fall in love with him. Mateo, on the other hand, was the complete opposite. He only grew more steadfast in his bad boy resolve, determined not to let love shackle him. That afternoon, for the first time, Mateo took the initiative to text Caden on his own, as himself. "Do you still have any questions you're curious about?" But of course, not for free. And this time, the condition was that Caden had to come over to Mateo's home. Would Caden be able to pass this test? Knowing full well there was a tiger in the mountains, Caden still went. The moment he received his boss's invitation, he rushed straight to Mateo's house. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't calm the nervous pounding in his chest. He had already made up his mind. He must apologize for the past and slowly build something real with Mateo, piece by piece. Carrying that determination, he pressed the doorbell. But the sight that greeted him hit like a fatal blow. Mateo dressed like that at home? Caden forced himself to look away, silently warning, "This is a trap of temptation. I absolutely cannot fall for it." He pulled out the bouquet he had carefully prepared, offering it as a gift for being invited to his boss's home for the first time. At that moment, Mateo found it unexpectedly endearing, charming even, that Caden was still so proper despite the situation. Caden sat stiffly on the sofa. Apart from their daily encounters at the shop, he suddenly realized how little he truly knew about Mateo. So he began quietly observing the house, collecting clues. He saw the plush bears Mateo liked, a graduation photo, and a picture with his grandmother. Just then, Mateo walked in with tea and began speaking slowly. My parents divorced when I was 6. I was raised by my grandmother. She's well known in our town, an amazing cook. She raised me strong and healthy all these years. But because of that, I almost never ate food outside. It wasn't until high school when I tasted bread from a market stall that I instantly fell in love with it. That's why I eventually opened a bakery. Even now, my grandmother still despises that market bakery. Caden smiled gently. Even so, because she loves you so much, she must also be happy for you. Mateo teased. So our little bear cub really does know how to care for others. Then he went to find a vase for the flowers. Caden forced himself not to sneak glances, reminding himself to stay calm. But Mateo couldn't find one, and suddenly came up with another idea. How about we do something else instead? Caden immediately straightened, firmly declaring he wanted to cancel their deal. Mateo was caught off guard. How could he let the prey escape when the meat was already at his lips? Driven half mad, he thought. Even just once, he had to taste it. Left with no choice, Caden used a judo hold to restrain him. But Mateo wasn't about to back down so easily. If you won't let me touch you, then I'll change tactics. This is my house. I can do whatever I want. Let's see how long you can endure, little bear. He studied Caden's reactions while turning up the act of temptation. Finally, catching him off guard, Mateo wrapped himself around him. Caden spoke with complete honesty. Boss, it's not that you're unattractive, but I truly like you, seriously, and because of that, I value you even more. Those words left Mateo stunned, and at last he lowered his weapons in surrender. Gently, Caden comforted him, guiding him away from judging only with his eyes, teaching him instead to start feeling with his heart. Caden, step by steady step, always leading the way. He deserved a round of applause for that. Caden asked Mateo to name 3 of his strengths, but none of them could be about appearance. Mateo racked his brain, feeling as though his very soul were drying up. Aside from what he could see, he honestly couldn't think of anything. Watching Caden working with such energy, so full of life, Mateo's own thoughts were nothing but impure. Lights on, voices rising. The supporting role made his entrance. His name was Logan. But what was his background? Mateo's delight was plain to see, while Caden's face betrayed a flicker of unease. Caden quietly pulled out the apron Mateo had left behind at his place. Listening to their conversation, he finally realized that the night Mateo had gotten drunk was when he'd been with Logan. Upon noticing Caden helping out at the shop, Logan immediately confirmed, "So it really is you, the type Mateo can't get enough of." No wonder he was so troubled last time. After sending Logan off, Caden wanted to demand an explanation. What exactly was the relationship between the two of them? But suddenly, an idea of revenge flared up in Mateo's heart. He refused to be the only one feeling uneasy. That silly bear had to taste that same restless insecurity. So he deliberately said, "Our relationship is very special. But, well, it's a secret." The words struck Caden like lightning. It was obvious how much it mattered to him. He looked Mateo dead in the eye and said seriously, "I'm stepping out for a bit." Then he turned and bolted like the wind. Mateo assumed he was going to hunt Logan down for answers. But instead, Caden headed straight for the alley across the street. Curious, Mateo followed in secret and watched from the shadows as Caden threw an arm around a younger boy's shoulders. Facing them were a group of thugs. Caden declared himself the boy's cousin, stepping forward to shield him and teach the bullies a lesson. Seeing this, Mateo's blood boiled. When the tension threatened to escalate, he rushed out pretending to be a hot streamer, coincidentally, live broadcasting a case of school bullying. The gangsters, afraid of exposure, scattered immediately. Back at the shop, Caden explained everything. A month ago, he had noticed that every time Daniel came to buy bread, he looked downcast, sometimes even with bruises on his body. Yet he always bought a lot. Caden grew suspicious and decided to protect the boy with the righteous spirit of a judo practitioner. Only then did Mateo realize how wrong he had been. All this time, he had overlooked it. Caden was, in truth, a warm and caring person. After closing time, Mateo called Caden aside and finally told him the 3 strengths he had asked for. Caden didn't say a word, but inside he was blooming with joy. Mateo added with a wry smile, "These past few days I couldn't eat or sleep properly. Took me all this time to finally figure them out." Caden's pride swelled so much he could barely contain it. Clearly, Mateo was taking step after step closer to him. That night, Caden chased Mateo all the way to his front door, smiling as he said, "I've got my answer now. Time to hold you to your promise." Fresh out of the shower, Caden was spotless, looking every bit like an athlete about to step onto the mat for a decisive match. The moment Mateo laid eyes on him, he knew the boy was starving, desperately so. He waved him over. "Come here, quick." But to his surprise, Caden dropped to his knees the instant he got close. Mateo blinked, momentarily thinking, "Is this the start of some puppy training routine?" A sly thrill surged in his chest. "Today, I'll definitely have my way with him. Where should I begin?" Yet, when Caden actually got to work, it wasn't the simple play he had imagined. Very quickly, Mateo realized he had underestimated him. All along, Caden must have rehearsed this moment countless times in his heart. What followed was the main course, served from the collarbone down. That meal, rich in both flavor and skill, carried something more precious than technique: the care and reverence Caden held for him. Even though Caden himself was famished, he insisted on letting Mateo eat first. In his drowsy sleep afterward, Mateo drifted into a dream of his childhood, of the days when, after his parents left, the only companion he had was a small stuffed bear, soft and warm. When he awoke, he realized the dream had already blended into reality. Afraid Mateo might wake up hungry, Caden had quietly prepared a midnight feast and laid it out on the table. The fierce wolf instantly turned back into a docile pup. While they ate, Caden mustered every ounce of courage to extend an invitation. "There's a school festival this weekend. Would you come watch me?" In the blink of an eye, the festival day arrived. Mateo showed up, dressed neatly for the occasion. Caden, meanwhile, looked completely different. Gone were his usual sports clothes. Today, he seemed mature, striking, irresistibly captivating. "It's our first date, after all," he said with a grin. They strolled through campus together, 2 handsome men walking side by side, an almost unfairly perfect match. Mateo let out a wistful sigh. "Ah, youth is really something. Back in my school days, I was so caught up in baking competitions that I skipped out on the whole student life. Looking back now, I do feel a little regret." Before Caden could get a word of praise out, 2 younger girls came running up, offering him a pair of event bracelets. While fastening one onto his wrist, one of them whispered shyly, "Senpai, you look so handsome today." Then, blushing furiously, she darted away. Watching the scene, Mateo immediately realized those girls were smitten with Caden. And there Caden stood, utterly oblivious, basking in their compliment with a goofy, pleased look. Annoyance bubbled up in Mateo, making him nitpick and search for faults where none existed. In truth, he was simply jealous. Later, they stopped by the judo club's booth. Mateo was welcomed like royalty. The muscular boys here had eaten their fair share of his bread, after all. Some even tried to rope him into having a drink with them. Caden instantly stepped in, blocking them with practiced ease, shielding Mateo firmly at his side. That protective move, so effortlessly cool, turned the silly bear into someone startlingly manly. At the festival, Caden's best friend finally came face to face with the legendary boss, grinning. He teased, "You know, Caden talks about you all the time." Hearing that, Mateo's chest filled with sweetness. His mood soared, leaving him speechless with delight. Just then, the citywide auction event began. Out of nowhere, Caden's name was called. He had become the auction item representing the judo club. Mateo froze, nerves tightening. Only one thought dominated his mind. I have to win this bear cub and take him home. Only then can I do as I please. The bidding started. Almost immediately, someone called out 200,001. It was none other than the junior girl who had given Caden the bracelet earlier. She gazed at him with expectant eyes. Mateo countered without hesitation, his presence radiating force, cutting her off at every turn. Back and forth they went, driving Caden's price up to 300,000. In the final round, money no longer mattered. Each bidder had to state their reason for wanting Caden, and he would choose for himself. The girl took a deep breath, summoning her courage. I like you, senpai. I want to date you. Mateo's heart lurched. All he had wanted was the boy's body, but now he was forced to compete against genuine, heartfelt affection. Caught off guard, he muttered an excuse, feigned withdrawal, and quietly slipped away. On the way home, Caden's best friend caught up with him. Boss, it's time you faced your own feelings. The words struck Mateo like a wake-up call. So that was it. He didn't just want physical satisfaction. He truly couldn't bear to let his little bear go. He turned on his heel and ran back to campus, searching desperately. The moment he saw Caden, he couldn't hold back, charging in as if to protect his husband from the world. The two of them sat down on a stone bench. Caden's expression was tinged with sadness. I thought you'd gone home, boss. At last, Mateo opened his heart. I once gave everything I had for love, but in the end I was only left broken. Since then, I've been too afraid to offer my heart to anyone again. Caden shook his head gently. No matter the outcome, what you did wasn't wrong. Being hurt was never your fault. To comfort him, Caden suddenly scooped Mateo into his arms and carried him straight to the campus wishing fountain. Actually, I wanted to bring you here from the start, he confessed, but I was afraid you'd find it annoying, so I used the festival as an excuse. Legend had it that wishes here only came true if you could toss a coin directly into the mouth of the stone bear, a nearly impossible feat. Caden revealed a pouch brimming with coins. Today, I'll prove something to you. Results may not always be what we want. But if we keep trying, the rest, we leave to fate. Mateo was stunned. Slowly, he stepped into the fountain, picked up a coin, and placed it directly into the stone bear's mouth. Then he turned back to Caden, his voice steady, his eyes unflinching. I like you. At last, Caden had reached Mateo's heart. And so, a beautiful love was just about to begin. After confirming their feelings for each other, the two returned to Caden's home. The tension between them had built to the point of bursting. What followed was an endless night of exercise that lasted until morning, every position, every embrace. In short, that night, Caden and Mateo came to understand each other thoroughly, body and soul. The next morning, Harry first made sure Mateo was still alive and well before receiving a message Caden had left behind. I've already put up the sign saying the shop is closed for today. Just rest. I'll head to class first. Dragging his exhausted body around Caden's house, Mateo stumbled upon something unexpected. The business card he had given Caden the very first time they met, and even the paper bag that once held the croissants he had gifted, were still carefully kept by Caden to this day. Mateo let out a quiet sigh. What am I supposed to do with this bear? He's so precious, so lovable. There's no way I could ever let him go. Meanwhile, Caden was hopelessly distracted during practice that morning. The slightest touch sent him tumbling, his whole body radiating happiness, his heart floating endlessly back toward Mateo. As for Mateo, dressed in the bear-style shirt Caden had chosen for him, he prepared to return home. Before leaving, he placed his watch in Caden's care. The hands were stopped at the exact moment from last night, the moment he confessed his feelings. At the airport, a blonde-haired man had just landed. Dangling from his backpack was a small bear keychain, an item impossible to overlook. Caden's greatest threat was finally about to appear.